right, welcome back. Another episode of the Empty Gym Podcast. I'm Jack Hobson, as always, joined by Adam Pollard and Michael Terzakis. Welcome back, boys. It's been a week. I was absent last week. I was in Cincinnati for the Butler Xavier game on the night that we usually record, so we kind of got pushed back a week due to travel there. But we're back now, and we're kind of doing a little. Almost halfway through conference season update. So I guess we can just kind of dive right into it. Adam, any conference in particular you want to start out with here?
Yeah, there actually is one conference I want to start out with. It was actually the conference that we started out with in our preview, the America East. If you remember, I was very high on the Bryant Bulldogs, currently 4-0 in the America East, and I was also very high on Vermont and UMass Lowell, and they're also undefeated in America East Conference play. So some pretty stellar preview predictions by yours truly.
There you go. I did forget about our America East preview, but
it was very short, but we had it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's good to hear the Bryant Bulldogs are doing so well for you there. But
I'm very excited. Very excited.
I guess we can move on to our next conference. I'll let you pick that again, Adam. Unless Mike, you have anything to say about the America East.
America East, anything?
You're a New York guy.
I gotta do a little more research on the American East. I don't have much to say.
That's all right. Adam, give us our next conference. Hopefully, one that we know a little bit about.
Well, let's just go alphabetical and let's just go with the ACC. I'm sure. I have a lot to say, so I'll let you guys start this one off, and I'll finish it off.
Mike, go ahead.
So far, I would say one thing that stood out to me in the ACC is, well, obviously North Carolina, but not only North Carolina, but RJ Davis's performance at UNC this year. I mean, so far he's played like the best guard in the country. He's averaging over 20 points a game, which is on par with any guard in the country right now. I think Caleb Love leaving North Carolina for Arizona was good for both of them. And we'll get into Arizona later when we do the Pac-12. But I think it's really allowed RJ Davis to take more shots and really run this offense. And also with North Carolina, the additions of Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram have just been huge for this team. Specifically, Harrison Ingram's defensive presence, it's been huge. And although Cormac Ryan struggled from three, once he gets that shot going, I think North Carolina is going to be a serious national championship contender. So Carolina's looked fantastic, and RJ Davis has looked like the best guard in the country right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I've been on the Elliot Cadeau bandwagon since day one. I think him coming in for Caleb, like you said, Adam, I think that was, or Mikey, excuse me, I think that was one of the rare cases where I felt like both teams won, or both the team and the player won by that kind of divorce or separation or whatever you want to call it. But Caleb Love, like you said, Mike, we'll talk about it later with Arizona, playing great for them. They got a pretty good team this year, but Carolina, you just see, obviously, RJ Davis looks a lot more comfortable on the court. Looks like he's kind of being able to get his shot more, not really have to worry about Caleb Love as much. And then, obviously, we've talked about it a little bit in the past before, but like the off-court issues too, that who knows what was going on over there, but those are all gone. Like I said, with Cadeau, I've been a huge fan of his all year. I thought he was obviously as a freshman, especially as a freshman point guard, and especially as a freshman point guard for a team like Carolina. I thought he's been very, very good this year. Obviously, some bumps in the road here and there that'll happen for a freshman, but I thought he's been playing really well. Adam, I know we talked about this a little bit before, and we'll kind of get to some of these teams that have been disappointing so far. Duke, they're not really a disappointment to me yet. They've had, conference play is tough. They've had a couple tough losses, but Virginia's the real one for me that I'm just kind of been worried about a little bit so far.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. They're 4-3 in conference right now, and as far as Virginia basketball standards go, that's nowhere near where they'd like to be right now. But if you just look at this UVA roster that they have currently, it's not a roster that you're used to seeing from a UVA team where it's highly talented. You usually have one, maybe two NBA players, NBA prospects on that team. Their best player is Reese Beekman. Now, I like Reese Beekman a lot. I think he's a very good defender, but he cannot be the person that leads your team. And I feel like that's just kind of why they're in this spot right now. Is the roster just not built the way it should be and the way it has been?
Yeah, I mean, you had a team with DeAndre Hunter, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, the point guard's name, Kihei Clark. And that was still a team that wasn't that great offensively. And
they always just found a way to win.
Yeah, like they found a way to score. Like you had guys that could score. You might not necessarily have an offense that leads to 75, 80 points a game or anything like that, but you had guys that could score and that could also defend, obviously, which their team always does very well. But like you said, I think that's the big problem for them this year is they don't really have a guy to like you said, Beekman, good player. I no disrespect towards him, but he's not a number one guy on like a team that's going to be successful in the tournament or throughout a conference like the ACC. So I do think that is one of their bigger problems is not having those guys that can score like they have in the past that can kind of get them over the hump of the team, like total team offensive struggles, I guess.
Yeah, and real quick, I do want to go back to North Carolina. It's very impressive, and the ACC is down, and it has been for the last couple of years. It's still very impressive to be 8-0. But what impresses me most about this UNC team is they're like beating the snot out of some teams. I mean, I think they put up like 100+ points on Syracuse or Pitt, one of those two. Like they're like clearly winning games, and that's just very impressive for me to see.
Well, going off North Carolina too, all 8 of their conference wins right now, they're 8-0 in ACC play, have been by double figures, and I believe 5 of those games, not 6. Wait, sorry, I should have did some research. No, 4 of those games were on the road, and their first 3 games were at Pitt, at Clemson, and at NC State. All those games they won by double figures. I mean, far and away the best team in the ACC.
Yeah, and those 3 aren't powerhouses by any means, but they're all good teams and teams that one had a lot of success in non-conference, especially Clemson was like 11-1 or something like that in non-conference, but Carolina's just kind of dominating them. And I thought Carolina could be one of the better teams by the end of the year. I thought it'd take, especially with Cadeau, as much of a fan of his I am, but it's still a freshman point guard, and it's still R.J. Davis and Baycott. Like, who's kind of the alpha? I thought that would be a question that would take a little bit longer to answer, but now it's kind of clearly R.J. Davis. So I thought this could be a team by the end of the year that would be pretty good, but I was not expecting them to kind of be in the position where they're at right now, but which is obviously 8-0, very good. But they got let's see the upcoming schedule. They got 2 road games with Florida State and Georgia Tech. Should probably be fine on those, and then Duke at home. Not this upcoming Saturday, but next Saturday. So that. And then right after that, Clemson, and then at Miami. So kind of a tougher 3-game stretch there. If they can get through that 3-0, then I think the sky might be the limit for this team. But Carolina, one of those that, like I said, I thought it might take them a little bit longer to kind of get going, but they've gotten that going pretty quick. Some other teams in the ACC that are doing pretty well, NC State, 13-5 overall, 5-2 in conference, excuse me. Florida State, kind of a surprise so far. Kind of struggled in the non-conference a little bit, and now 5-2 in conference. It seems like from everything that I've kind of heard from people and stuff like that, that this might be Leonard Hamilton's last year, so that could be part of it. They're kind of trying to gear up for one last run with him. Who knows? I guess we could do a kind of a Duke update from you, Adam. Your thoughts. I know you had a tough one this weekend, but.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough loss. That night I did feel a little better, though. The Green Bay Packers did lose to the San Francisco 49ers, so that made my night much better. But watching that game, it just I just don't know where. I don't think anybody wanted to win. Anybody wanted to play. It was just such a bad performance. Ryan Young is continuing to get minutes where he shouldn't be. Like he cannot play the style of basketball that John Shire wants to play. He kind of wants to get running, fast-paced basketball, but you get the ball to Ryan Young, and all that stops. The only way he can score is pump fakes and like 3 post moves and then a layup. That's it, and it just slows everything down. As much as he wants to, claim, or media wants to claim he's a defensive, force rim protector, whatever, he's not. I don't think he can guard pretty much anybody. It's just very tough. And one thing I feel like that's hurt us a lot is we were waiting for this Tyrese Proctor sophomore year breakout season. The numbers were supposed to go up and up and up, and they just haven't. He's not playing bad by any means, but if Duke wants to keep contending for national titles and keep being this dominant force in the ACC, like, he needs to get those numbers up and take that sophomore jump like he was supposed to.
Yeah. That's just kind of I feel like that's kind of been the big thing for Duke, like you said, Adam. Tyrese Proctor was supposed to make that jump, and we just haven't quite seen that yet. So, they're still number 12 in the country. Still nothing to be like too concerned about, but there are some little minute details and stuff that could be fixed if you want to turn this team from a second weekend team to like a more Final Four national championship contender. But anything else from the ACC from you guys?
Yeah, just real quick. Another down team is Miami.
Yeah,
I kind of thought Miami would. They went to the Final Four last year, obviously, but I kind of thought that with Nigel Pack coming back and Wooga Poplar, that they would be a dominant force in the ACC and ranked top 25 in the country. They're just not there right now, and they're losing bad games, losing games that they shouldn't, and it's just a down year for Miami.
Yeah, and going off that, they just don't have a ton of depth. They don't have a ton of size. Like, obviously, they have talent with Nigel Pack and Norchad Omier, but we really expected them to be in that tier with Duke and North Carolina as like the third best team in the ACC without a question. And they've just been in the middle of the pack, and they've been playing pretty bad in the ACC. They lost to Louisville. I believe that game was at home too. They lost to Louisville at home. They lost to Florida State at home. They just lost on a buzzer beater to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. So that's a tough one. But they've just lost some really bad games that are just continuing to hurt their resume come Selection Sunday. So it's just been a really disappointing year for the Canes.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, anything else from you on the ACC?
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's kind of crazy that we live in a world right now where the Mountain West could potentially get more teams in the tournament than the ACC. Like, that's going to be a tight race to see who gets more teams in the tournament. Just very disappointing because I'm a fan of ACC basketball, and it's just it hasn't been good since like 2019, really, if you break it down.
Yeah, if you took the under on 15 and a half minutes into the recording that Mikey T would bring up the Mountain West, excuse me, you won that bet. Clear
I can't wait to get into that conference.
Clear cut Mountain West guy, but yeah.
One thing I real quick I will say about the ACC is, Mike, you're 100% right. It has definitely been a down year and hasn't been what it has been since probably 2019. But whenever those teams get to the tournament, they're always live, and it feels like you're always seeing a ACC team, Elite Eight, Final Four, those kind of runs. So that's one thing I do think the ACC has going for them is that tournament success that they have recently been having.
Yeah, they do. They do always get teams. It seems like they might only get like 4 or 5 teams in, but one of them seems like they're always in the Final Four every year. So I guess conference success hasn't been great, but the team success in the ACC has been pretty good in the tournament. But I guess with that, we can move on to the Big 12 if you guys would like. 17 teams in the Big 12, or 7 teams, out of the 14, I believe, that are in it now. That number seems to be changing every month with realignment and everything. But 7 teams right now ranked from the Big 12. With the conference leaders right now being Texas Tech and Kansas State. Kansas has already dropped 2. Houston's already dropped 2. Oklahoma seems like they might not be for real after starting out so hot. BYU, I know we're big BYU guys, Mikey. They fell to 2-3. They got a big one tonight though against Houston at home, which is on ESPN Plus, which makes no sense, but
That
yeah, it's on ESPN Plus. But yeah, Big
such a
12.
joke.
Big 12 is definitely a gauntlet. Ton of great teams. No one's undefeated anymore. Only 5 or 6 games in for some of these teams. So, Mike, I guess I'll start with you here. What have you kind of seen from the Big 12 so far this year that you've either liked or kind of been disappointed in?
Well, I guess I'll start with just the depth of the Big 12. I think right now, 11 of the 14 teams in the Big 12 can get to the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying that they will, but I think 11 teams are good enough to get there. And I mean, we just look at the teams they added: BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati. They're all adding just a lot tougher games, and especially tough road games. Playing in an environment like BYU or Cincinnati. I think this is kind of troubled teams like Kansas, who have just dominated the Big 12 for years. It just adds like another layer of tough road games to get into in the conference, and I think it just makes the conference better, and it's been fun to watch thus far.
Yeah, I think those additions definitely helped more basketball-wise than they did football-wise, which I feel like as we've kind of seen the Big 12 realignment versus conferences like the Big 10 or the SEC, Big 12 seems to kind of be going all in on basketball, bringing in a school like BYU, bringing in a school like Cincinnati, Houston, teams that have had football success, but I think are kind of more well-known for their basketball. And then you add in next year, what do they got? Arizona, obviously a perennial powerhouse in college basketball. Arizona State, who can kind of be good and be sneaky in some years and stuff like that. And then Utah, another basketball program that's kind of down right now in terms of like how success that they have had in the past versus like the last couple of years, and that not being the same, but still a program that's always been pretty good. So I think you bring in, I think the Big 12 is definitely like kind of going in a direction of going all in on basketball, whereas Big 10 and SEC are kind of going all in on football, which like those two leagues will still be good at basketball, obviously, but the Big 12, I feel like, has really made it a point to be like, we're going to be one of the better, if not the best, basketball conference in the Power Five. But those teams do just add like another layer of, you really don't get a night off at all in the Big 12. I mean, like we just saw this weekend, Kansas losing to West Virginia. So it really is just every night is a gauntlet for these teams. And I think Houston has done better than I expected almost. Like I know they're only 3-2, but 2 of those losses came in the same week. But I mean, it's just kind of tough. Like you're going to have bad weeks where you go up against 2 ranked teams in a week, and one of them's on the road. So that's just kind of what you got to deal with being in the Big 12. But a big one tonight between those two, between Houston and BYU, that I'm really excited about also. But Adam, anything you got on the Big 12?
Yeah, I was very wrong on Texas.
Yeah,
I thought
too.
Texas would kind of emerge themselves as being a top team in this conference. And they're not out of it by any means. It's very early, and there's a lot of teams that are 2-loss teams. But I kind of thought Texas would be contending for this regular season title, and they just haven't been there. Real quick, too, you did mention the Kansas losing to West Virginia. I feel like I saw a stat. I was trying to look it up. I couldn't find it. I thought I saw a stat that Bill Self, whenever he goes and plays at West Virginia, like he is like under 500. Like I think he has a problem with West Virginia. I don't know what it is. I could be wrong on that stat, but I feel like I saw he was like under 500 and a pretty bad under 500 when he goes and plays at West Virginia.
Well, the rumor forever too was he's a Oklahoma State grad, and I think at one point he was like under 500 at Oklahoma State. So there was like a rumor that he was,
Oh yeah, I
or
did
a
hear that too.
conspiracy theory that he was always dropping those games on purpose just to give the alma mater a nice little boost for their tournament resume. But I mean, Morgantown's just a tough place to play too. Obviously, Huggy Bear not there anymore for certain circumstances that we won't have to dive into. But they went all in on this kind of being. This was supposed to be Huggins last year, and that they brought a ton of NIL in and got a bunch of good players. And like I know the train got kind of derailed off the tracks with everything that happened over the summer, but they still have a lot of talent there and can pick off teams on any given night. And it just happened this weekend, obviously with Kansas.
I do miss Press Virginia though.
Yes, that
full court press was awesome to watch.
Yeah, but they're still hanging around, getting some wins where they can. But anything else on the Big 12 from you guys? I guess Texas Tech kind of a surprise so far this year in terms of how they're still kind of staying in it. 15-3, 4-1. They've had some kind of drama off the court that's trying to get resolved a little bit, but with a freshman transferring out. But Pop Isaacs has been playing really well this year, and they look like they could be a pretty good team that could contend in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I feel like when we did our Big 12 preview, I did say to watch out for Texas Tech, and I had absolutely no reason as to why. It was just a kind of a gut feeling. Watch out for Texas Tech. So another stellar job from Pollard there on the previews.
Yeah, you've done pretty good on the
Bryant and Texas Tech. 2 for 2. But we're not going to mention Texas though.
Yeah. Anything else on the Big 12 from either of you guys before we kind of hop into I guess the Big 10 would be next.
Let's go to the Big 10.
Or actually, let's go to the Big East first, if we'll stay in alphabetical.
Oh, okay.
Mikey, big East guy. I know you grew up in New York, grew up going to the Garden for the tournament.
Every year.
Right now, we got UConn at 7-1, Creighton at 5-3, Marquette at 4-3, and Nova at 4-3. Those were kind of the top four coming in. But Seton Hall, kind of the surprise this year at 6-2. What are your kind of thoughts on the Big East as a whole, and a little bit maybe about Seton Hall and how they've kind of surprised some people this year in Shaheen's second year?
Yeah, so I mean, so far, I mean, UConn. We kind of thought at the beginning of the Big East, like prior to going into the year, we thought UConn, Creighton, and Marquette were just going to be a three-headed monster. Well, I think it's pretty clear that it's a one-headed monster with UConn and then the rest of the teams. But Marquette and Creighton did have good weeks of basketball, so that's good. But yeah, I mean, this conference is so deep. I think 9 of the 11 teams are tough teams to beat. And I think like 9 of the 11 teams are also like top 70 in the net or like right around there. You pretty much have 4 games in total that you're supposed to win. Going off Seton Hall, I mean, it's incredibly impressive what Shaheen Holloway's been able to do throughout his first 8 Big East games, especially since they looked very underwhelming in non-conference, to kind of turn your season around and start to have your players buy in kind of into your coaching style. And, you know, these 6 wins, they haven't the only like cushy win they got was at Georgetown. Outside of that, they beat UConn, which is going to look great come Selection Sunday. They beat Marquette, and they have 2 nice road wins against Providence and Butler. So, I mean, Seton Hall's looked legit, in my opinion, like a legitimate top 5 team in the Big East. And those teams always make the tournament. So, yeah, they look good so far.
And they almost beat Creighton, too.
Yeah, I mean, took Creighton 3 overtimes to beat Seton Hall.
Yeah. They've definitely been a huge surprise so far this year. Obviously, the only blemish on UConn's Big East resume so far, with being their only loss. Providence, I do want to talk about them for a second, just because I think this is a team that could have been really, really good, and like kind of reminded me a little bit of Providence 2 years ago in some of their first couple games in the Big East. Obviously, Butler being one of them, and I can't remember what the other game was that made me think of it, but it just seemed like at first, like this was going to be a Providence team, like I mentioned, like 2 years ago, where it felt like somehow, some way, especially at home, they were going to find a way to win every game, like by the slimmest of margins. And you're going to think like, is this team for real or not? But at the same time, it's like they're finding a way to win all these games. Like obviously they weren't really blowing anyone out, but they were finding a way to win all of them. And then Bryce Hopkins gets hurt. Devin Carter seems like he's pretty much doing everything he can right now to keep this ship afloat. But I just don't know how much that's going to be without losing a big guy like Hopkins.
But I think Providence is heading in the right direction, though.
Yeah.
I think their program as a whole with Kim English is headed in the right direction. I think they're going to be contending for Big East titles again in the next coming years.
Yeah, I think Kim English was put in a tough spot following up Ed Cooley. Because not only do you have a guy who was there for 12 years, a guy that's from Providence, didn't go there, but is from the town. That kind of like, I think everyone thought that was going to be his last stop. And then on a whim goes to not only just another team or another program or anything, but one that's in conference, an original Big East rival. And then Kim English has to come in as, I believe only his third year as a head coach. I think he only had 2 years at George Mason before this, but as a relatively young head coach to kind of take over for everything that Cooley's done and honestly like be better at it too, because like the thing now for Providence fans is they don't want to just be good. Like they want to be elite and obviously dominate Georgetown in any way they can. I think that's this weekend that those two play against each other. Maybe next weekend that Ed Cooley makes his return to Providence. But yeah, I think he was put in kind of a tough position following up a guy like Cooley, and he's done really good with it so far and kind of kept that program on the tracks. Obviously, like last year could have been a really bad year for them, losing a lot of guys to the portal, but they kept a lot of guys. Ticket Gaines is a guy that has gotten a lot better this year, become a really big 3-point threat. Obviously, I think he hit like 4 in the first like 5 minutes against Butler or something like that. But yeah, Providence, good team too. Anything else, I guess, from the Big East that you guys want to talk about?
I do want to get your guys' thoughts on this. This thought came to my head when I was watching the Creighton-UConn game, but probably a week and a half ago, I don't think Stephen Ashworth fits too well at Creighton. I don't know why. Whenever they're on the floor, whatever, I just don't think it fits too well, and I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on it.
I mean, he hasn't looked great at Creighton. I mean, he's averaging under 9 points a game. I don't know. He's a ball dominant guard, and there's already guys like Shireman and Trey Alexander who take. I mean, I don't know how many threes off the top of my head per game, but I'd imagine like at least 8 from both of them. And he's coming from Utah State, where he would probably take like 15 threes a game. So it's just. I never thought it was a fantastic fit either. I mean, it was sexy because, Creighton's motto is let it fly, and you're adding another really good 3-point shooter. But, like, he's a guy who needs a lot of looks, and he's just not getting that at Creighton.
Yeah, I think him coming in, he was never going to, like, replace Nembhard in a way. Like, I get that he's, like, taking over his spot, but it never seemed like he was going to be like Nembhard 2.0. Like I felt like Nembhard was like, yeah, he'd take his shots and everything, but he was much better at like distributing and getting guys like Shireman and Trey Alexander open. And that just isn't really Ashworth's game. And I feel like now Trey Alexander has had to change a little bit. Shireman's had to change a little bit. And like you said, Mike, this seemed like really sexy at the beginning, bringing in a guy like that in to a system like this. But yeah, I just don't think it's really flowed very well together so far this year.
I will say, though, it does have potential. I mean, if Ashworth, because I know he takes up the ball right now, maybe with time, he's just going to be another threat behind the arc, and maybe he takes less 3-point attempts per game. So I wouldn't give up on it yet, but like so far, it just hasn't been a good fit.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they get this figured out, like. And not even say like they need to get anything figured out too much. Like they're still 14-5, 5-3 in conference. They're still a top 20 team. Like it's not like things are going that horribly or anything, but it's just like it's not playing up to the expectations I think that we thought of, like a top 10, maybe even top 5 level team that we thought Creighton could be. So, but if they do like get those minor details kind of figured out, then this team could really become like a Final Four national title contender level team. I guess one last thing that I'll talk about, St. John's, I feel like has kind of been rocky all year. Like they look like they're starting to get everything figured out. I think they won like 3 in a row at one point or something like that, and then who did they lose to this weekend? Marquette was the close one, and then Seton Hall and Creighton, so they've lost 3 in a row. But yeah, so it's like just when you thought that they were kind of starting to figure out, like all these losses were close. You got at Creighton by 1, at Seton Hall was by 15, but I don't feel like that game was really a 15-point game. And then obviously at home against Marquette on Saturday, lost by 1. I feel like that's kind of like goes to what you mentioned, Mikey, with the depth of the Big East. It's like all of a sudden, like you can go through, like you can be winning 4 in a row, and then you have a stretch that, like Creighton, at Seton Hall, Marquette, like you're thinking, all right, let's go 1 and 2, maybe string out 2 somehow, and then all of a sudden you go 0 and 3, and now you're back to 4 and 4 in the conference. I think that just kind of preaches to the depth of this conference and how tough it is. But St. John's kind of on a downspin a little bit right now.
Yeah, this conference is just brutal.
Yeah,
absolutely brutal. The Big East tournament is going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that out in New York. But you guys good with going to Big Ten now?
Yeah.
All right. So we got over in the Big Ten, we got the number 2 team in the country, Purdue, who is currently a half game back of first place in the Big Ten to Wisconsin, who's kind of been the surprise team. Excuse me. I mean, Wisconsin is an interesting team. Bringing in a guy like AJ Storr, that kind of is not maybe your typical Wisconsin player, where like things are getting a little bit more high tempo on offense as opposed to some of the Bo Ryan days where they played games in the 50s and low 60s and stuff like that. Like I remember seeing a video a couple weeks ago of like Chucky Hepburn throwing a lob off the glass to AJ Storr, and it was just like, I can't believe that this is Wisconsin basketball.
Is Wisconsin basketball.
Yeah, but they're 6-1 right now. Their only loss was, who was that to? Penn State. Yeah, Penn State last week. So yeah, they only have 1 loss, and they have a relatively, obviously with the Big Ten being 14 teams, you're not playing everyone twice. You're not playing everyone home and home. They kind of have a relatively easier schedule. They do have to go to Purdue. They don't have to go to Illinois. They got Minnesota coming up tonight, which is a big game on the road. Minnesota is another team that has kind of surprised some people. But yeah, like they relatively easy schedule compared to what it could be in the Big Ten. So Wisconsin looks like a team that could legitimately win the Big Ten championship this year.
I think I do like Wisconsin. I just don't know if I relatively trust it for as far as winning the conference goes. I think this is kind of a 2-man race right now between Purdue and Illinois. I just don't see Wisconsin being able to string together what they need to win this conference as far as like regular season goes.
Yeah. I think that there's definitely some questions for concern, obviously, with Wisconsin.
Because they started off really bad.
Yeah,
I remember they started off really bad. Like, I was ready to bury Wisconsin.
That game at Providence where they lost by like 30, I was like, dang, like, because I thought that they could be like not this good, like where they are right now, but I thought they could be like pretty solid, make the tournament, be a top 4 Big Ten team, something like that. Then they lost to Providence by like 25, and I was like, damn, like I don't know if this team's any good at all. And they've kind of turned it back on lately, but yeah, you got Purdue and Illinois. Illinois obviously gets Terrence Shannon Jr. back with that whole ordeal. Purdue's still dominating. They have a couple tough losses on the road at Northwestern, at Nebraska, to teams that just kind of shot lights out. So not too concerned about them with the two losses. Nebraska is a team that I do want to talk about a little bit. Keisei Tominaga might be one of my favorite players in college basketball. He's just awesome to watch. They were a team that I thought from the beginning could be a kind of a sleeper in the Big Ten, not necessarily to win it by any means, but to contend, to maybe sneak into the top four, and then maybe be a bubble team or something like that at the worst. And right now they're 14-5, 4-4 in conference. Isn't great, but it's not terrible. But they got a game against Ohio State tonight that's pretty big, at Maryland this weekend. But the next week it gets real tough with Wisconsin at home on Thursday, and then going to Illinois on Sunday. So things are going to get real for Nebraska, but I thought they were a big surprise team so far that I kind of thought could do this. Michigan, the dumpster fire, obviously, right now. Ohio State kind of been bouncing up and down a little bit. Like, it seems like they're a team that has a lead going into the last 2 minutes of going into the under 4 timeout. Feels like they have a lead in every game. And it's just like, can they hold on for dear life? And sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. But, Mikey, anything from the Big Ten that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would just say don't count out Michigan State. I think they're going to be at the top of the Big Ten come the end of the year. Obviously, we've seen it a lot in these past couple of years with Michigan State. Their teams, they're playing their best basketball in late February to early March, and they started out really slow. They're starting to play a little better. I mean, they're still not there, or not where Tom Izzo wants them to be, but I think this is still a team with a ton of talent. This is a team with arguably an All-American guard in Tyson Walker. Don't count out this Michigan State team yet. And yeah, Nebraska, as you mentioned, they're playing great. I mean, this is their chance to get into the tournament for the first time since 2014. And, for them to have a win against who I think is going to be, without question, a 1 seed and maybe the number 1 overall seed in the tournament in Purdue is huge for their chances to get into the tournament come Selection Sunday. But overall, the depth of the conference, it's a little down regarding in terms of recent years. There's really 2 teams, maybe I guess 3 with Wisconsin and 4 with Michigan State, going off what I just said, but 4 teams that I think are legitimate teams to I wouldn't even say get to the Final Four, but get to the second weekend. I think there's 4 teams in that conference that can.
Yeah, and speaking of Michigan State, they do have an opportunity with their upcoming schedule to kind of turn this conference race around. I know they do have the 4 losses already and everything, but at Wisconsin on Friday, which if they get a win there, then that obviously adds another loss for Wisconsin, and then helps them with the head-to-head and everything. But Michigan at home, Maryland at home, at Minnesota, and Illinois at home is their next 5 if you include that game over Wisconsin or game at Wisconsin coming up this weekend. So two opportunities for big quad 1 wins, 1 on the road, 1 at home with Wisconsin and Illinois, and then a relatively easier stretch with Michigan at home, Maryland at home, and at Minnesota. So that's a big chance to kind of go 4-1 maybe in that stretch and pick up a big win over either Wisconsin or Illinois, and kind of get really right back into this conference race. So I think that the schedule, although it is tough with those 2 top 15 games right now as it stands with the rankings, it does give opportunities, one for big quad 1 resume wins, but also for wins that help them get back into the conference race too, with some easier games. But yeah, this is a conference, like you said, Mike. The depth is not there like it has been in previous years. The tournament success has obviously been kind of the biggest headline of this conference, not having a title since 2000, technically 2002 with Maryland, but they weren't in the Big Ten, so not really having a team truly from the conference win a title since 2000. So the lack of tournament success has definitely been the big storyline. But like you mentioned, they got a couple teams that I think could make a run. But the big thing will be seeing how far they can make it. And if you're trusting teams like Purdue and Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan State right now, based on one, kind of how they've played so far this year, and two, based on previous history of their lacks of tournament success, it could be trouble for the Big Ten again. But anything else on the Big Ten from either of you guys?
No.
All right. Let's move on to let's go Pac-12. We can kind of run through this pretty quick. Arizona, I know they have 2 losses and they're tied with Oregon and Arizona State for the lead in the conference right now, but I think they're going to run away from the pack pretty quick in this conference. And Oregon kind of shown flashes sometimes. Arizona State has been sneaky good since conference season has started. I know you're out there in Tempe, Adam, but the rest of the conference just doesn't seem like it's quite like you only got one ranked team with Arizona. USC was a team that people thought were going to be pretty good. I think I had them as my Pac-12 champions, kind of as a dark horse, but they're 2-6 in conference right now, 8-11 overall. UCLA has been a big disappointment too. But yeah, I guess I'll start with you, Adam, since you're out on the West Coast. What have kind of been your Pac-12 thoughts so far this year?
Arizona's by far away the best team in this conference, hands down. The transition with Caleb Love coming in has went a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be. No, my good friend Mark Titus did say last year Arizona was like, Kirk Riesel, he can go. Let's glad we got rid of this head case point guard. Let's just bring in Caleb Love now. Edwards worked out a lot more than better than I thought it was going to be. So I guess props there. USC is very down. Boogie Ellis is hurt, and I think Isaiah Collier's out 3 to 6 weeks. And they did come to Tempe a couple days ago. Bronny James did play, and he also, I don't know if you saw this, he was running back into the tunnel at Arizona State, and the crowd was booing him the entire time. So he, for whatever reason, decided to run up and jump and touch a sign that was above the door leading to the tunnel, and he proceeded to smoke his forehead on the sign. And it's a very hilarious video if you have seen that video.
Yeah, I did see that video. That was a tough look for Bronny.
I'm surprised SportsCenter even posted it. I thought they just bury it.
Yeah, for the glazing and everything. But yeah, like you said, Pac-12 is just kind of down this year. Arizona does seem like they're far and away the best team. Mike, you got any thoughts on the Pac-12?
Yeah, I mean, overall, just very disappointing. All the teams that were supposed to be good suck. Well, not to put it lightly, but, they're not good. I mean, we talked about USC. UCLA was at least supposed to be, on the bubble for the tournament. They're under 500. Colorado was supposed to be this really good team that was supposed to compete for the Pac-12 title, and they're 14-5. They're not bad, and they could make the tournament still, but they haven't really done much to really assert themselves as a legit contender in the Pac-12. I mean, just overall, this conference has been very disappointing. I think the second best team in the conference is either Oregon or Utah, and they're both sitting on the bubble. It's just not a good look in its last year as a conference. I'll leave it at that. It's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and the lack of ability for any of these teams, especially Arizona. But if you don't take Arizona is really your only opportunity at a high quality win. So it's if they just keep beating each other up in this, I do wonder how many teams are even going to end up in the tournament from the Pac-12. Because there's just I feel like a couple of them, like you said, maybe Oregon and Utah and maybe Colorado kind of pull themselves ahead of the rest of the pack and make this a 4 or 5 bid league or something. But yeah, I mean, besides Arizona, there's really no high quality wins on the Pac-12 schedule. So that makes it a little tougher too to kind of build a resume and everything. But yeah, just not too much going on out west with the Pac-12.
Speaking of UCLA, though, real quick, do you guys think Mick Cronin's gone?
Oh yeah,
there have been rumors that he might take the Louisville job.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if we'll take the Louisville job. I think a lot of people want the Louisville job, just with the money and the resources that they have. Like, if they put someone competent in there, Louisville can be really good, really quick. So I think you're going to be kind of surprised to see how many people are up for this Louisville job. But I think Mick's going somewhere regardless. I think he's just done with UCLA. It was always kind of a weird fit. And they were really successful too, kind of the last couple of years. Obviously had that run to the championship game, but it always did feel like kind of a weird fit, him leaving Cincinnati, but and going to a team like UCLA just didn't seem like it really fit his style or anything. So, but I definitely think he's gone after this year.
Well, I guess another name that has been maybe might contend for the Louisville job. I guess we can use this as our segue into the SEC, but the Muss Bus, Eric Musselman at Arkansas, that is kind of floating around that he might be leaving there.
Yeah, I think Louisville, I think that's kind of, from what I've seen, Louisville's kind of top target right now.
That would be too. I mean, he brings a sense of culture that you don't see, like, of the version that he has. Like, the run that Arkansas has had the past couple of years of the tournament has been so fun to watch. Yeah,
they have been a really good team. Kind of struggling this year a little bit, 10-8, 1-4. So that this might be a good opportunity for him kind of get out of there before the legacy's kind of tarnished or anything and go to Louisville. But for the SEC right now, it does feel like kind of, and me and you have talked about this a little bit off air and stuff like that, but it does kind of feel like a three-headed monster and everyone else right now with Tennessee, Kentucky, and Auburn. Alabama kind of trying to sneak their head in there a little bit. South Carolina kind of trying to sneak their head in there a little bit. But Ole Miss came into conference play undefeated. Now they're 2-3. Like, I always kind of thought that they were going to drop off a little bit. But Mike, it does kind of feel like that kind of three-headed monster of Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee is gonna stay like that the rest of the year.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think those three teams are all contenders for the national championship. And I kind of want to ask this to you guys because I really have no idea. And I guess we'll find out once they play each other. But where would you rank those three teams right now?
Weirdly, I like Auburn at 1.
Yeah, I have not seen a ton of Auburn. I've watched like some of their games and stuff like that, but I keep seeing like they keep winning. Obviously, they're 5-0 in conference. I might slightly side with Kentucky here a little bit, just because I think they're really good, and I think they're just going to keep getting better too. Deep down in my heart, I want it to be Tennessee because I hate Cal and I hate Bruce Pearl, but I think all three of them kind of have a case for being number one. But I would say Auburn's definitely playing the best right now, but I feel like Kentucky has the most room to keep improving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And just like with the amount of freshmen Kentucky have and like how much better like Calipari's teams play down the stretch heading into March, I think Kentucky has the highest ceiling out of those three. But I kind of agree with you, Adam. Like right now, I think Auburn's the best. And, you know, we're going to find out when they all play each other. But Auburn's beaten all 16 of their wins have been by double digits. Like they've been just killing teams. Like it's been crazy to see. I mean, just everybody they beat. They beat Arkansas at Arkansas by 32. They beat Ole Miss by 23. I mean, they're just absolutely dominating teams on a nightly basis. And, you know, one of their losses was the first game of the year, and they had a ton of transfers come in. So they're a way different team than they were. And their other loss was like a bad bye game to Appalachian State. I mean, ever since then, I mean, they've looked like just one of the best teams in the country. So I would put Auburn 1, probably Kentucky 2, and Tennessee 3. But, I mean, that can interchange at any given point. Those three teams are all really good.
Yeah, and also looking at the schedules too, obviously SEC being a team or a conference that has 14 teams, similar to the Big Ten, not everyone's going to play everyone home and home. Auburn only has to play Kentucky and Tennessee both just once. I believe they have to go to Tennessee but get Kentucky at home. Whereas, obviously, with that being said, Kentucky and Tennessee both only have to play Auburn once, but they both have to play each other twice. So that kind of helps Auburn a little bit. That's like in terms of kind of the conference race and everything. That's at least one. Like even if they only had to play one of them twice, I feel like that would be pretty nice. Not having to play both the other top two teams twice. But Auburn gets away with only have to play each of them once, and Kentucky and Tennessee obviously will get their matchup with Auburn, but also have to play each other twice. First one coming up next weekend between the two. So that's something to look at too, is that Auburn kind of getting the benefit of the doubt of, or the benefit of the scheduling, I guess, that they only have to play each of those top three teams once, which helps them a little bit. But yeah, like you mentioned, Mikey, Auburn's just killing everyone right now. They got a game against Alabama tomorrow night. Big rivalry game, obviously more known for the football side, but still a big basketball rivalry, especially with how those two teams and two programs have kind of elevated themselves over the last 5-10 years or so, as the SEC is kind of putting more importance into basketball and put more resources and money into it. We've seen those two programs benefit a lot from it. So should be an exciting conference race there that might not have the conference might not have the depth level that other conferences have, but the top three is some pretty heavy hitters. So be interesting to see how all that plays out. But anything else on the SEC?
Yeah, real quick for Kentucky, here's what concerns me for them right now is they're letting teams score a lot of points on them.
Yeah.
If you watch that Georgia game, they were up by like 26 at one point. I think there was like 6 minutes left in the game. I was about to turn it off. And then Kentucky starts throwing like no-look passes and chucking deep threes, and like they ended up only winning by 9. But if you give up 96 points to Georgia, 97 to A&M, 85 to Florida, like that's what concerns me is if you play this run and gun offense, like you're giving the other team a lot of possessions. Like if you're not hitting the threes or whatever, like I feel like this defensive struggles can come back to bite Kentucky in the ass a little bit.
Yeah, it is kind of the alternative. Like I know, Adam, we talked about it so much, especially in the tournament last year and a little bit so far this season. Kind of the alternative of like the Tennessees and the Virginias and stuff like that. That there's so few possessions and so low margin for error. But with having these games with a ton of possessions, with this, you're giving your opponent a ton of opportunities to score and a ton of opportunities to stay with you. And their defense has been something that's struggled a little bit. More than Auburn and Tennessee, whereas they've been kind of more or been better on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, that is definitely something to be concerned about. I guess that one other thing, obviously Arkansas kind of been a disappointment this year, but Texas A&M too. I thought they had the opportunity to be really good with Wade Taylor and Radford and Henry Coleman and that other big Marble, right? I think is that Texas A&M. Yeah,
Julius Marble.
Yeah, thought they had an opportunity to be a little bit better. They've kind of been a little bit disappointing. They did get that win over Kentucky, not this past weekend, but the weekend before in overtime at home. So maybe that could be something that kind of helps them turn around. But that another team that's kind of been a disappointment a little bit in the SEC. But yeah, anything else on the SEC?
All good.
All right, we are looking at about 10 minutes left. We are recording this on Tuesday night. We got about 15 minutes left until the Dogs game starts at Georgetown. So hoping to get a win tonight. This will obviously be published in the Wednesday morning. So don't know yet for sure who won that game. Hoping for the Dogs. Should get a road win tonight, but I guess with about 10 minutes or so that we got left, we can kind of do rapid fire a little bit. Adam, I can let you start. I know you're a big Valley guy, and Mikey, I know you're a big Mountain West guy. I can kind of, if we want, I can give you guys a little opportunity to shed some light on your conferences that you guys are so passionate about for all the people, if you'd like to do that.
I would love to. I love talking Valley.
All right, we'll start it off with you then, Adam. Let's hear what's going on in the Valley right now.
Indiana State is a team that I think could surprise a lot of people if they make it to the tournament. Because you realistically, I mean, I think the Missouri Valley has always been a one big league, and it's probably heading that way. Maybe you can sneak a two bid league in, but I think if Indiana State makes it to the tournament, like you could maybe see them in a Sweet 16. Like they are a good team.
Yeah, I think they have a real good shot at being an at-large bid.
Did you see that Mark Titus clip where he had a dream?
Oh yeah, he had a dream, and he said that I don't know why, but it's Indiana State's in the Sweet 16.
I can see it. They're good.
Yeah, they do have a really good team. I think they do have enough of a resume. Obviously, we're only nearing the end of January right now, so still a lot more to happen. But I think they can be good enough to be an at-large if Drake or Bradley or like maybe Xavier Johnson goes off for Southern Illinois that week and they find a way to win the tournament in St. Louis. But I think Indiana State, as of right now, has enough to be an at-large. Worst case scenario. Would anyone else be an at-large if Indiana State does win the Arch Madness? I don't think so right now, but
Probably not.
But I think
maybe Drake.
Maybe, yeah.
Bradley, no. Bradley, if Bradley wants to go to the tournament, they have to win the Arch Madness.
Yeah. Drake does have the win over Indiana State at home, which helps a lot. But we'll see. It's kind of if there's going to be an at-large, it's going to be one of those two probably. And I think Drake's only shot really of being an at-large is if Indiana State wins the league or wins the conference tournament, because if a team like Bradley or Southern Illinois or something wins it, I don't think they're going to give 3 bids to the Valley. I think that at-large would go to Indiana State, obviously, and I don't think Drake would sneak in, but still a lot of basketball to be played. But I think this is kind of gearing towards potentially two bid league with the way that Indiana State and Drake have been playing, but also with the way that some of the teams that definitely aren't getting an at-large bid, like your Bradleys, SIU, stuff like that. I think that there's going to be a lot of competition in the Valley coming down, going into Arch Madness.
Hey, don't look now, but the Braves are left 1-8 in a row.
Yeah.
That was an electric 20-plus point comeback at SIU the other night.
Yeah. Hickmania is in full effect right now.
Oh, yeah.
Valley.
So back.
Yeah. Because, let's see, looking at the conference schedule, or the conference standings right now, got Indiana State and Drake tied at 7-1 apiece. Obviously, Indiana State with that loss at Drake. Drake's loss coming against when was Drake's loss? When was Drake's only conference loss? Oh, Belmont. They lost to Belmont by 22.
Bradley beat the brakes off Belmont.
About that. Yeah, they did. And then you got Bradley at 6-2. Northern Iowa, always a sneaky team, 5-3. Murray State kind of surprising some people at 5-3. Southern Illinois 4-4. Belmont 4-4. Illinois State 3-5. And then you kind of dive into kind of the bottom feeders. Evansville, shout out Coach Rags, turning things around at Evansville a little bit. They're 11-8, 2-6 in conference. But my boy Rags, former Butler assistant, hoping that he can get that turned around. But yeah, you do have teams with Bradley and Northern Iowa, maybe Murray State, but Southern Illinois, like obviously a player like Xavier Johnson can kind of determine your week, and he can go off and get them into the Valley Championship or something like that. But Valley's been a lot of fun so far this year too, so it's been a lot of fun to watch. But anything else on the Valley? Or go ahead.
Oh
Mike.
yeah, if I could, I want to just say a couple things. First of all, Arch Madness is awesome. And I want to ask you, well, obviously, and I mean, personally, I hope no offense to the Bradley Braves, obviously they're going to make things tough and there's a lot of good teams, but I hope we see Drake and Indiana State on that Sunday, which leads to my following question. What are your thoughts on them doing the Arch Madness tournament, like a week earlier than conference tournaments. Do you like it? Do you think it makes the team rusty? I don't know. Give me some thoughts.
I actually like it a lot because I have been to that tournament 3 or 4 times in St. Louis. It's an electric atmosphere. It's very nice to be able to take that weekend and just focus it on Missouri Valley basketball. You don't have to worry about any of the other Power Fives, the conferences, tournaments going on, nothing like that. I just strictly am focusing on Valley basketball.
Yeah, and I think also that having there's always like a noon CBS game. Or this is Central Time.
2 p.m. slot.
Yeah, there's like a noon CBS game, a 2 p.m. CBS game. And I think one of them's like another small conference title or something. And then you had the Missouri Valley on national TV at 4 o'clock, and it was just like it's perfect. Like
it rules.
It's in a time where like everyone's kind of like you're nearing towards the end of the year. Like people who aren't really that big into college basketball are like starting to be like, all right, March Madness is coming up. Got to start watching some games so I know what to do with my bracket. And then all of a sudden, like they got CBS on watching Kentucky play Tennessee for the SEC conference regular season title, and then they just keep the channel on, and then all of a sudden it's Bradley and Drake fighting for a spot in the tournament. So I think it's awesome the way that they do it. I think it really sheds a spotlight on a smaller conference like the Valley, and I think it's just entertaining too for fans that. While you're kind of in this last weekend of the regular season for all the Power 5 conferences, like you're going to have some good games at night. Like I feel like Duke UNC is always on that Saturday night. There's other big kind of regular season games that wrap up the year, but having your conference title game on that weekend to kind of get that shining moment a little bit, I guess, of popularity and of viewership and everything, I think is really cool for the Valley. But yeah, anything else on the Valley before we wrap it up with the Mountain West?
Go Braves.
Go Braves. Who do we have this week?
The War on 74 is coming up soon.
Yeah, there's
the War on 74 is actually on the same night as Duke UNC, so that'll be a wild.
It's in the afternoon, so you got some time to. Yeah. We got Murray State tomorrow night. Big one at Indiana State next weekend. UNI at home on Wednesday, and then, as you mentioned, the War on 74, 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. I might head to that game actually.
Boots on the ground, War on 74.
I might be boots on the ground for the War on 74.
Redbird Arena.
It is at Redbird, which helps me because I can get some good tickets at Redbird through some connections. But
the Potters own Redbird.
Yeah, Potters own Redbird, but the Braves are going to own Redbird this week. I will have to go in just my Valley crew neck.
Just supporting the conference.
Supporting the conference, but yeah, I will be heading back home next weekend for Game Ball Run. Shout out the Potters. Shout out Children's Hospital of Illinois. So maybe while I'm waiting for that game Saturday night against East Peoria, I slide on over to Redbird for a little bit and watch some War on 74.
We got the Raiders on Game Ball Run night.
We do. Cobro coming back.
Ooh,
yeah, but
rivalry game.
Big rivalry game.
These teams don't like each other. Throw out the record books.
Throw out the record books. Mid-Illini Conference basketball for you. Did not think we were going to get the Mid-Illini minute today.
No, I did not either. It happened.
All right. We got about 6 minutes left. Mike, give us your Mountain West minute or two.
All right. I mean, the Mountain West is absolutely loaded. It's one of the best years in the history of the conference. I couldn't be more ecstatic about it. I mean, Utah State, to hone in on them, they brought back 0 minutes from last year's roster that made the NCAA tournament. They bring in Montana State's coach in Jeremy Sprinkle. I don't know his first name. His last name's Sprinkle. And he's just brought in Montana State transfers and a bunch of guys from all over the place. And is now 17-2 and top 20 in the nation. Outside of that, New Mexico looks like they have a ton of talent. San Diego State's always at the top of the Mountain West. Colorado State has an All-American potential guard in Isaiah Stevens. Nevada looks like they can make the NCAA tournament. That is going to be a fun Mountain West tournament in Las Vegas. You talk about the Sunday 4:00 start for the Missouri Valley. Let's talk about the Saturday 6 p.m. start on CBS for the Mountain West Conference, because they get it. They have a quadruple header on CBS. The Saturday, I think the day before Selection Sunday, they do the Mountain West Championship that day. Always tuned in. No other games going on besides that one in my eyes. So this conference is very good. I think they have a chance. I don't think they will to get 6 teams in the NCAA tournament, but I think they're absolutely going to get 5 teams in this year. So a record year for the Mountain West, and couldn't be happier with how the conferences look so far. Although I do live in New York. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm obsessed with the Mountain West.
You're the Mountain West
I
man.
love it.
Yeah,
man. I love it.
I was the West Coast Conference guy forever, and I still kind of am. But BYU leaving just changed things a little bit too much. So I've kind of tried to move that fandom on the West Coast from the West Coast Conference over to the Mountain West a little bit, and I'm having a good time doing it. I won't lie to you. This has been a crazy year for the conference. Like you said, San Diego State team that was in the national championship game last year, and they're right now 4th in the conference. So it's like, and not only is it just like, oh damn, like they lost a bunch of guys. Like obviously they lost Keyshawn Johnson, but Ladie's back, and Ladie's playing at like almost an All-American type level. The Butler kid's gone, right?
Yeah, he's gone, but they still had Darian Trammell.
Trammell's still there.
Oh no, Butler's still. My bad. Lamont Butler's still there. They lost Mensa and they lost Matt Bradley.
That's who Bradley was who I was thinking of, not Butler.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they did lose a couple guys, but still brought a lot of their team back. They're 15-4, 4-2 in the conference, 4th right now. But yeah, Mountain West kind of crazy this year. It feels like they're going to get a lot of teams in. But Adam, I'll let you wrap it up with any Mountain West thoughts you got, being a West Coast guy.
Do you be surprised now that I'm a West Coast guy? I don't really follow the Mountain West too much, but I do like the fact that Utah State is overall 17-2, and one of their losses is to the Bradley Braves. That's my takeaway from the Mountain West.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess we do have a
and Nevada lost to Drake too. That's another W.
So the Valley owns the Mountain West.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Kind of.
I'm not saying it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got about 2 minutes to tip in the Butler Bulldogs game, so we're gonna wrap it up here real quick. A little programming note, or I guess not programming, but maybe a little housekeeping. We are doing a college basketball fantasy league between us 3 and some other buddies that we have as well. So we'll kind of keep you updated on that a little bit. That'll be fun to kind of track some of the individual stats and stuff like that of some of these players, and fun thing for content too and everything. So be on the lookout for that. But with that being said, that's pretty much all we got for now. We'll try to be back next week with an episode, kind of try to get back with getting back into school and everything, get back to the schedule again. We'll kind of talk amongst ourselves and try to figure out a day that works for everyone and try to get back on schedule and get a weekly episode out on the same day every week instead of having to bounce around a little bit. But we'll get that figured out. But with that being said, appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you next week.